Hi friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. Welcome to this week's video where we are going to be discussing all things fantasy series. Hi guys, editing Laura here. So something insane that I did is leave this candle in the video, the whole entire video. I didn't want to come out. Yet I outed myself as a stinky IBS queen. I got this candle for my boyfriend as a joke gift, but it's not really a joke. And I felt I had to address it. I had to get ahead of everything. I feel like it's just right there. It's just right there. I hope you don't see me any differently. And I hope you will still love me for me, even though I can be stinky. Okay, back to the video. I personally think I've read enough fantasy to consider myself an expert on fantasy. I definitely could read more though, and I'm going to go into that a little bit later. But for right now, I want to go through some books that you could start with if you are feeling the urge to jump into fantasy and you have never done so before. I personally think fantasy is a really fun genre because you can do a lot of genre bending within fantasy. So you can have fantasy sci-fi, romantasy, political fantasy. All these different things can feature in a fantasy book and a fantasy series, and that's what I like about it. And I also like, you know, the fantasy aspect of it. It's not of this world. It's the purest form of escapism for a reader. So let's start with my recommendations for books you can get into if you're wanting to dip your toe into fantasy. Okay, first up, we have the ACOTAR series. ACOTAR stands for A Court of Thorns and Roses, and this is by Sarah J. Maas. I have the books right here. I am currently lending the first two to a friend. This series is literally everywhere. If you haven't heard of this series, even if you're not in the reader world, I would be surprised. I would consider these books the most popular in Sarah J. Maas's universe and the easiest to get into. The first book, A Court of Thorns and Roses, is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and I would consider it very easy reading. I am actually currently reading it right now for the third time. It is my least favorite in the series, but it is a good introduction to the world and to the magic system and the characters, and it's quite short. It's not as long as these books. The second book, A Court of Mist and Fury, is my personal favorite, and then we have A Court of Wings and Ruin, and then we have the novella A Court of Frost and Starlight, and then the final book, A Court of Silver Flames. However, the reason I'm rereading it is because Sarah J. Maas has just announced that there is going to be 2 new books in the ACOTAR series. This is a commitment, but it is, in my opinion, the perfect introduction to fantasy because the first book is not too politics driven, and it sort of gets there in this book. I think the peak is in this book, but I feel like that's a good introduction to fantasy if you want to read other books that are more politics driven and might be a bit more dense to get through. This series though is the queen of romantasy. Like, romantasy is romance in fantasy, so you sort of get the best of both worlds. Get fantasy and romance in one, and it's amazing. And this series I would definitely recommend as a good introduction to that. And then to continue on with Sarah J. Maas, the next series I would recommend is the Throne of Glass series. This series is completed and it's massive. There's, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 books. I'm pretty sure. And the last book is 1,000 pages. But again, this is a really, really good introduction to fantasy. Even if you just read the first 2 books, they're quite short. In Throne of Glass, you're basically following Selena, and she is in a prison, and she gets a deal where she can be freed if she wins this trial that the king is holding. And that's pretty much all you need to know to get into it. It's really good, really strong female main character, really good love interests, and slow burn romantic vibes. This one is not slow burn, it is quite spicy. All of the books, Throne of Glass is not spicy, like barely at all. So I would say that Throne of Glass is more fantasy driven and politics driven and plot driven, and it's amazing. It's actually so good. I don't have the books because I listened to them on audiobook, and I do need to actually physically read them. I just want to get the most out of the story. I feel like I missed a lot listening to it, but I still had an amazing time. And then following that in Sarah J Maas's universe is the Crescent City series. I have yet to read these, and I'm a bit intimidated because they are gigantic and they are more of an urban fantasy, I've heard. I don't know when I'd get to these if I'm just getting into fantasy. I think if you really enjoy Sarah J Maas's writing, I would say that it's an option, but they're massive and I'm scared. So that is my recommendations for if you're wanting to commit to series and start off with that. Definitely start off with Sarah J Maas. However, if you, like me, were a big reader when you were a teenager and very into like dragons and dystopian feeling vibes and amazing love interests, I would also potentially recommend, as a starting point to fantasy, Fourth Wing. I don't have the first book with me right now, but I have the other 2. Don't be intimidated by these. I would, at this rate, only recommend the first one. And then if you're still interested, read the rest. But the first one, amazing. In my opinion, it's amazing. When I was reading it, I felt all the things that I used to feel reading books like The Hunger Games and Divergent for the first time since I read them. You're following Violet, and she has decided to join, I forget what they're called, but they're dragon riders. And to get in, she has to go through all these trials, and it's high stakes and scary, but also an amazing enemies to lovers plot. I know I don't usually like to use tropes to describe a book, but I sincerely love the enemies to lovers trope, and this does it really well. It is not extremely carried out well in the rest of the series, but in the first one, wow. And I think it could really spark your interest into romantasy if you start with Fourth Wing. And the dragons. The dragons are so cool. Who doesn't love dragons? Next, in terms of easier reads to get you into fantasy, we have the Divine Rivals duology. So Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows. The synopsis says, when 2 rival journalists find love through a magical connection, their fate depends on their facing the depths of hell together. So these characters live in a city where there are gods, and the gods are warring, and the characters are basically put in the middle of this god war, which is insane, but it is just so lovely in terms of the romance. So if you're big into romance, but you're wanting to dip your toe into fantasy, this is heavy on the romance with fantasy thrown in there. You know, like the plot is fantasy, but the romance. Same with the Powerless series by Lauren Roberts. There is quite a bit of controversy around Lauren Roberts plagiarizing Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. However, I read this first, and I would say that this series definitely got me back into fantasy in my adult years. The first one is definitely my favorite. So if anything, I would recommend Powerless. And if you don't continue with the rest of the series, that's fine. But this is a really good introduction as well to enemies to lovers. Just classic classic enemies to lovers if you're just wanting to explore if you like that. Get into that. Next we have the One Dark Window duology. These books are insane. I think I rated the second one 5 stars. I thoroughly enjoyed my time. I thought this was a unique fantasy that I have never read anything like it, and I had a lot of fun. I think that the plot is very unique. It centers around this girl named Elspeth, and she pretty much has this monster in her head that talks to her and she talks to you, and the magic system is based around cards. Like I can't remember what type of cards. No, I don't think they're just a standard deck. I think they're more like tarot card vibes. If you hold a card, you have that magical property. So I think that's really cool because the whole plot is driven around that, and there's only a certain amount of cards, so people like fight each other for them and stuff goes down. So I would say that this one is definitely more fantasy plot driven, but there is like tiny little subplots of romance. So if you're wanting to diverge from romance but not fully, go into this one. Same with this duology, the Dance of Thieves duology. These are amazing. And I would say that these are heavy on the plot and the politics. So I would get into these a bit later on into your fantasy journey, but highly, highly, highly recommend them. And another classic enemies to lovers that is actually done exceptionally well. Exceptionally well. Oh my gosh, I love these books. I think I need to do a reread soon. Next, these ones I would definitely recommend further into your fantasy journey. The Swordcatcher series, or it's called the, I actually have no idea what it's called. The Radpicker King. The Chronicles of Castellane. These are written by Cassandra Clare. Look how stunning the covers are. This is the first one, Swordcatcher, and then this is the second one, The Radpicker King. There are definitely more books coming out, but this is a more recent series. I love Cassandra Clare, as I'm going to discuss in a minute, but these are her latest releases. They are adult fantasy and high fantasy. So high fantasy means they are heavy on the plot and politics within the fantasy world. So a lot of world building happens in this book so that you're able to completely grasp what's going on and the magic system and the politics, because it's really important. And then in this one you get to have all the fun and it's amazing. I really enjoy it, and I feel like if you want something that's more politics driven and high stakes, get into the Chronicles of Castellane series. Amazing. Then we have the Serpent and the Wings of Night series. I think it's called the Crowns of Nyaxia series. This is the first one, the Serpent and the Wings of Night, and this is a vampire fantasy. So if you're into that, get into it. I think I remembered enjoying the first book, but I actually DNF'd the second book, and I think it was a lot to do with uni. I was going through a lot, but also it was just not hitting, and I didn't want to finish it, and I don't want to read the rest of this series. But a lot of people love this series, and I think for me, I'm just not a big fan of vampires. I don't know, something about it. Like, I love Twilight, and I would say that, I don't even know where it is, but A Court of Thorns and Roses can be heavy on the vampire as well, but not as heavy as this. Yeah, I don't know. It's just something about it didn't hit for me. But if you like vampires and you like trials, hit these books up, I guess. Moving right along into young adult fantasy, we have the entirety of the Shadowhunters Chronicles. Look at this. Wait. Okay, gonna go through them one series at a time. So I first started reading these when I was like 14 or 15 years old. And this was the first series that came out, the Mortal Instruments series. This was actually made into a show called Shadowhunters, I'm pretty sure. And also a movie with Lily Collins and Jamie Campbell Bower, I think that's his name. You've got 6 books. These are urban fantasy. The Shadowhunters are pretty much demon
Hunters, which is really cool. And you're following Clary, who is part of just the normal world, and she discovers that she can see these Shadowhunter people, and she's like, what are they doing? And she discovers that she is a Shadowhunter, and her mum has been lying to her whole life, but for good reason. You start with these, and then you go into my personal favorite and a lot of people's personal favorites, the Infernal Devices series. So you have Clockwork Angel, Clockwork Prince, and Clockwork Princess. These are amazing, and whereas the Mortal Instruments were set in, well, it was modern time, like the early 2010s, these are set in like Victorian England, 1800s, late 1800s, and these are just amazing. These, I don't even want to spoil anything, but basically you're following Tessa Gray, and she discovers that she can sort of shapeshift, and she's like, what is happening? She gets like kidnapped and pretty much introduced into the world of Shadowhunters, and there she meets Will Herondale and Jem Carstairs, my two loves. So that is the next series you get into. And then you got these chunky boys, the Dark Artificers series, Lady Midnight, Lord of Shadows, and Queen of Air and Darkness. This is back into modern times, so 2010s into like early 2020s. I think this is my second favorite series. This series is so good. This book is massive, but really good. What I'm pretty much saying is all of these Shadowhunters books are perfect for some fun YA fantasy with heavy subplots of romance. Now, I would say the Mortal Instruments definitely can read as YA, but the rest of them do not. I think they're only YA because of the content, like there's nothing explicit or bad in there. Everyone should read these books. Anyways, lastly, you have the Last Hours series. That is not in order, but that's okay. Chain of Gold, Chain of Iron, and Chain of Thorns. In this series, you're back in the 1900s, and it's so much fun, so much yearning. Oh, the yearning. If you want classic fantasy with so much yearning, found family, a million different characters, oh, it's just so good. Definitely get into the Shadowhunters Chronicles if you want to commit to that. So in the vein of YA, obviously, if you haven't already, get into Harry Potter. Harry Potter is the easiest introduction to fantasy. Oh, they're heavy, far out. You will probably know the story, the general characters. Yeah, easy and really, really short first couple books. Oh, they're heavy though. Yeah, like it's such a big part of popular culture that if you don't know even just the characters' names and what they do, you've been living under a rock. Like, where have you been? So I think this could definitely be a very good introduction to fantasy and one of my favorite series. This is one of my favorite books ever. And last for YA is the Lunar Chronicles. I haven't read this for a while, but I really remember enjoying myself. These are fairy tale retellings. So this one's Cinderella, this one's Red Riding Hood, this one is Rapunzel, and this one is Snow White. And they're sci-fi as well, so sci-fi fantasy, but they're young adult, so they're not too complicated, but they're also really, really good. From what I remember, I haven't read them, oh, it's been a while since I've read them, over 6 years probably. Another good intro to fantasy and sci-fi, I feel like. I love these books and they're so pretty. For standalones, we have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This one is sort of a more like a modern magical realism sort of vibe, but I would still say it's fantasy. Anyways, it's really good. You're following Addie LaRue, who pretty much is made immortal, but she's been cursed because she can't be remembered. So she basically just has to live forever alone because no one remembers her. As soon as she leaves like the room or the conversation, she's wiped from their memory. But one day she goes into this store and this guy remembers her and she's like, what? It's been like hundreds of years and nobody has ever remembered me. What's going on? I love this book. Definitely a good introduction into fantasy as well. And then The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown. I've just talked about this in a couple of my last videos because I just read it, but again, it is an amazing fantasy standalone. So much happens in 400 pages and it's all wrapped up you don't have to read any more books, and it's so much fun. So because so much happens, you're never bored, really. Would definitely recommend. And the last standalone fantasy I would recommend is Babel by R.F. Kuang. I love this book so much. I've rated this 5 stars. This is more of like a historical fantasy. It's about Babel, the Tower of Languages, and it is heavy on the messages of colonialism and how that impacted the world we live in today, using this really cool and unique magic system as like a metaphor for it all. Really cool. So if you're looking to get into some more political, higher stakes, historical fantasy, definitely recommend this one. And now I want to get into some of the fantasy books I want to read, because even though I just went through all of those, I feel like I still haven't read a lot of fantasy. First, we have Brandon Sanderson. I do have the first book somewhere and I can't find it, or I just can't be bothered. So this is the Mistborn trilogy. I think a lot of people recommend to start with this series to get into Brandon Sanderson. He literally writes so fast. I don't know how he does it. Like, what are you doing? Like, calm down. Oh, I'm tired. I literally just hit a wall. I would really love to get into this series, but it is so intimidating because look how big this trilogy is. And then he has so much more, upwards of 30 to 40 books. I swear to God. And that is way too many. But I want to read them all, obviously. I only own these ones and I have to get into them this year. And then I want to get into the Spark of the Everflame series. Look how pretty the sprayed edges are. Oh my gosh, they are stunning. I have zero idea what this is about, but I've heard of very good things and I still got the entire series, even though I know nothing about it and don't know if I will even like it. So that's smart of me. I'm hoping I will enjoy this. If anything, they are just stunning. I also want to get to Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. The first one is in my TBR cart and I cannot get it out right now. These are cozy fantasies set in the modern world, so I don't think anything super high stakes is happening. I'm pretty sure it's just about Emily Wilde trying to make an encyclopedia of fairies. And then there's like a romance in there. I don't know, but I am going to read the first one in the next month or so because it is one of my book club's picks for April. Very exciting. And I think the last series I want to definitely get into is Robin Hobb. She's another Brandon Sanderson vibe because she has all these trilogies and series within one world, and I want to get into those. I've heard very good things, but I don't own any of the books and I always find them at Lifeline book fairs, but I never want to buy them because I'm like, 1, I don't have any room, and 2, I'm scared. I don't want to start it just yet. That is scary. Okay, I'm gonna take you over to my TBR cart to some of the fantasies I have in there. Ugh, look at my pile of books. Hi, welcome to the TBR cart. In here, the fantasies, we have The City of Brass. This one's supposed to be really good. Shield of Sparrows. No idea what that's about. The Will of the Many. No idea what that's about. Okay, I'm just gonna say I have no idea what any of these are about. The Book That Wouldn't Burn. The Night and the Moth. This is by the same author as the One Dark Window duology, so definitely want to get to that this year. Inkblood Sister Scribe. I don't know what that's about either. One for My Enemy. Getting to that this month. Come down here. Hi. We have Wild Reverence. This is by Rebecca Ross, who wrote these books, Divine Rivals, and I think it's in the same world. This is really lazy angle. So sorry about that. Oh yeah, there's Emily Wilde. And then we have Alchemized. Yes. Hi, she's massive, as well as these ones. I have some other fantasies, but I don't want to get into them right now. I'm sort of over it. So I hope this video gave you some insight into all things fantasy, if you're wanting to start getting into fantasy, or if you just want to get some more recommendations. I truly love the fantasy genre. I think it's so much fun, and if you can, definitely explore the fantasy world. a little bit more. Please let me know if you liked this video by leaving a like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Let me know what fantasy series I should get into because I'm always open for recommendations and I always want to hear. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'm so glad you're here and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
I love you all. I wish I could stay all night long.
Let's get out of here.